Hey everybody, welcome into the Cubs Weekly podcast presented by Wintrust, proud legacy partner of the Chicago Cubs and exclusive home of Cubs checking. Open online today at wintrust.com/Cubs Weekly. Tony Andracki here, joined by Andy Martinez and special guest Ryan Dempster. Dem, thanks for joining us here.
Yeah, I didn't even know this place existed. This is great.
Yeah,
it's like hidden in the corner too.
It is, and we have the old Vine line. If you're watching the video feed, we have Ryan Dempster here in a fireman jacket, firefighter. We have a Derrek Lee Vine line in here too, so we dug up some of our great Cubs artifacts from history here.
Thanks.
So yeah, no, we appreciate it.
That was a fun one, that shoot right there, because my dad was a fire chief and my brother a firefighter. My other brother was a volunteer firefighter. And after that came out, they said, Ryan, you should only put that on if you're a firefighter.
So you got in trouble a little bit.
Yeah. I'm like the black sheep of the family.
Yeah. By having a very successsul Major League career, winning the World Series, all that. Yeah.
They were like, hey, great game, but did you ever really save a life?
Yeah, exactly. That's a fair point.
Well, actually, that does kind of lead us into our first question. So we know, growing up in Canada, like, what drew you to baseball initially, and when did you think, hey, I can make a career out of this, and I want to make a career out of this? Yeah,
I think what initially kind of drew me was a combination of things. My papa, my dad's dad, was a big baseball fan. And then my parents played slow pitch softball. They were young, and they're playing these slow pitch leagues, and I'm a little kid, and it's like, oh, we need the Rover, so give him a glove. And I just would chase down balls because they didn't want to put their beer down to go run after it. So I did all that, and then it was like throw the ball in, and then I just loved baseball. And growing up in Canada, like you said, but where we grew up, we didn't get much snow. Maybe in the wintertime we got a little bit of snow, so the weather surprisingly wasn't bad. So you could always be outside playing baseball, and yeah, just kind of. I mean, I've wanted to do it since I was 4. It's in my baby book, like what I want to be when I grow up, 4 years old, professional baseball player.
That's awesome.
It's pretty crazy, yeah.
What was that moment like for you then, like when you actually become what that little kid wanted to do, he's finally done it?
Yeah, I think, it came in stages, right? It was like get drafted, which was amazing, and then get, sign a contract and go start playing professional baseball, and then to get to, AA and get that call. I'm in Binghamton, New York, walking in the field and supposed to start that day, and then I get call up the big leagues and find out I'm going first person, my mom and dad, like, hey, it's happening. Like, this is really happening. So, yeah, really surreal. I was pretty driven. So along the whole process, I wasn't like, if I get there in my head, I'm like, yeah, well, cool. I'm going to play 20 years. So it was amazing, man. Really, really special.
And then throughout the course of your career, I know you had so many Cubs teammates, and we just mentioned Derrek Lee as one of them. As you were coming in the room, you said, my guy. Like, what was it like to be teammates with him, obviously coming up as rookies together in Florida, but then playing for years here in Chicago? Like, what was it about him, one, that stood out as a teammate? We've heard all these great stories from you and other people about Derrek as a teammate, but just in general, like, what was that bond like with him?
Yeah, like, it really was. It is a bond still to this day. When you come up to the big leagues together, you're automatically, as a bunch of young kids, you're like, drawn to each other because you're all in the same boat. You're not free agents coming from different places. You're doing it together. You're trying to like make your way. And D was always so even keeled. It was like he had this just great persona of, he probably like so many times he just laughed at me like, look at this idiot coming in the clubhouse in a Speedo and flippers on and a mask, like I was jumping in the pool or whatever it was. But he always just like accepted me, and he was just really great. And then, I come here as a free agent, then he comes here via the trade. At the same time. So we're here together, at the same time. And we played 12 seasons together, which is pretty amazing. And then, he's such a good leader. And I was actually talking about some guys with this the other day. Like, he never like made you feel uncomfortable even in his most uncomfortable times. So like if you're in the dugout and something bad happened to him, like he struck out with the bases loaded, he wasn't smashing helmets. He wasn't making you feel tense. Instead, he was doing the opposite. He was disarming you. So, like, if he ever did get mad, instead of ever being like, oh, I better watch out, D's mad, instead it's like he had this force of guys behind him. If it was an umpire, yeah, we're all going to get thrown out or something, If it was a play, but he was just always ready. I think one of my favorite D. Lee stories, and he's so good about this, superstars, when things go on, like throughout the course of a season, if they're late for, you can find them all you want. Not that D was getting fined. You can find the money. They can write a check. That's cool. when you're elite like he is, the one thing that you can take away from a guy that drives him nuts more than anything else is playing time. And I always loved it when I'd come to the field, and I usually would get there before Derrek, and if I'd see his name wasn't in the lineup on the lineup card, I'd sit there and wait for him to come in the doors, and I'd be like, here he comes. And you'd see him because he'd always, this is before now they tell guys like a week ahead of time when you're playing, you know, but he'd walk in and you'd just see him and he'd go down and he'd be like, look at it, really funny, like, huh? Oh, okay. To his locker, not get dressed, straight upstairs to the office. Come downstairs, then you'd see a clubhouse guy run over to the lineup card would go back upstairs, and then a new lineup card would go up. D. Lee was like, I'm playing every day. I will let you know when I need a day off, and he never wanted one. And yeah, he was just like, when you have somebody like that wants to be in there like that every day, like you just fall in love with him. And then like on a personal level, and his wife and kids, and he's just a great man.
To that point, I mean, you said 12 seasons, one specifically, that 05 season where, I mean, he was, you mentioned elite, but I think he was beyond that. What was it like seeing that 2005 season from your vantage point and being with him that year?
Yeah, it was like, and for me, I was watching this kind of maturation take place where D came up and then he started to be a really good player, and then they win the World Series in 03, and then he comes here, he has a good year in 04, and all of a sudden, spring training, he's having a good spring, decent spring, and then he just gets off to this unbelievable stuff. Like people are talking about, is he going to hit 400? Like, I mean, it was, he was just murdering the baseball, extra base hits. He's hitting doubles off the wall every game, and it's like 2 for 4, 2 for 4, 1 for 3. Like, he was just as dangerous as they came, and he was so locked in, so balanced at the plate, and complete and total control of himself. And from a fan, I was geeking out and loving it, but as a friend, I was just in admiration of what he was doing because, he won the batting title. He was, my mind, he should have been the MVP.
Agree.
Like the things he was doing out on the field, and all the while too playing great defense, being a model human being, and everything he was doing. It was just like, I was satisfied for him because I felt like everybody really saw what maybe I or other guys had been seeing his whole career, and it's just like coming to this like apex of like, oh man, this dude's like, he's as bad as there is in the league right now, and it was really, really fun to watch.
One of the other guys you got to play with that many Cubs fans obviously know is Greg Maddux, and we've always heard a lot of stories from people, the pranks he would pull or the jokes or whatever. Do you have a favorite Greg Maddux story from your time with him, or even apart? Obviously he's such a big figure, and you were here for so long. What's your favorite Maddux story?
Wow. Yeah. A lot. Like you mentioned it, he was a kind of a jack of all trades. Like obviously, I don't know. Yeah, I would say top 5 pitcher that's ever pitched.
Yeah.
And then so there's what he did on the field and how he went about it. Like, I remember Larry Rothschild. We were in Milwaukee and there was runners on second and third, 1 out. 2 out. Russell Brandon was up, left-handed power hitter for the Brewers. Pitcher was on deck. Open base, first base, and Larry goes up to the mound. And they're having this conversation. Larry, was always very serious. He was just like, stoic. The game's going on, and he came back to the dugout with this chuckle on his face. And I'm like, "Why are you laughing?" And he goes, "Well, I just went out there and asked him, what do you want to do with this guy? Do you want to put him on first base?" And I remember Greg kind of looking over his shoulder and looking at the on-deck circle, like looking, and Russell Brandon. He goes, "Nah, I'm gonna throw him a cutter in off the plate, and then I'm just gonna throw him nothing but changeups. He's either gonna walk or he'll swing and miss, and I'll strike him out." And as he's walking off, he looks at Larry, goes, "But I bet he doesn't walk." And he goes out there, cutter in, and then change up, 3 swings and misses in a row. And It was like he called exactly what he was going to do. He did it, and he just had the, the kind of the general overall self-confidence to say, "I bet he doesn't walk." Like he did stuff like that throughout the game. And then you talk about the prankster. I mean, there was a lot of different things. Like, you did not leave a sandwich on the table and then go get like a drink. Because if you left it there, there might be something else inside the sandwich. There might be a bite taken out of it. It might just be 2 pieces. Like he'd walk up, take the bread off, take all the things out, put the bread back on, and then just keep walking. Like he was just always just like these little creative ways of just messing with guys. And he was a lot of fun. Best poker player I played with on the plane. Incredibly smart. He always liked to play the fart game. Yeah, it was really fun when he was charting pitches. So if you had to let gas go, you could run up to the clubhouse and you let one out, and then you'd mark it. And you'd have a score total at the end of the whole match. So it was like
incredible.
Yeah, I mean, the things Hall of Famers do.
Yeah. I guess you got to keep yourself entertained between starts somehow, right?
Yeah, that's it. And he was, you talk about teammates. Like as far as pitchers go, hands down, not a pitcher was as good of a teammate as he was, because he was always in the dugout, always on the bench. If he went and got a cup of coffee, it was in between innings and he was back out on the bench. The only time he wasn't on the bench was when he was inside charting pitches. That's it. It was like, and so now guys want to play for him, because if you're a hitter and you strike out and the guy's there, hey man, you got him next time. If you're there and you make a great play and he's high-fiving you just instinctively, subconsciously just start to play hard for guys like that, because they're always in your corner. And he was always on the bench no matter what. And he felt like there was a lot to learn out there, and he was right.
How beneficial was that you knew, like, hey, if I have a question about X, Y, or Z when I'm on the mound or whatever about a guy I'm facing, I can go up to this guy and he's going to treat me and help me out?
Yeah, he was really great. We bonded early on. We played against each other with Marlins, Braves for a long time. But in spring training of '04, we played a ton of golf together. And so then I felt comfortable always asking those questions. And for me, '04, I was hurt most of the year coming off Tommy John. So it was a way to almost like, I'm going to get a degree in pitching here and listen to him. And it's real, right? Like pre-Maddux, post-Maddux, being teammates, I'm like a 3/4 of a run lower ERA just from being his teammate. Things he would find during the game, things he would watch this guy and this guy, ask him questions, should I throw a guy a fastball in? He's like, no, he hasn't stopped swinging at your slider. Until he stopped swinging at that, not once, not twice, 3 times in a row, then you can go in there. Like, just a lot of different things, and he was just really good at that. He was there if you wanted it, and if you didn't want it, that's fine too. And
so via research, Kyle, who's back there, found that your Cubs debut actually was the same day that Nomar Garciaparra's Cubs debut was after the trade, August 1st, 2004. I didn't know that at the time. I know obviously that was your first year with the Cubs, but what was it like playing with Nomar, and then also just seeing the buzz? Like, that was one of the more buzzworthy trades in Cubs history, just like everybody's so excited that Nomar's coming here and what it means for the team, and the Red Sox obviously go on to win the World Series that year. But just like, what was it like being teammates with him and seeing that buzz after the trade?
Yeah, it was, man. There was a lot of energy behind that, because our team in '04 up to that point, we were right there and playing well and had a shot. And it was designed to be a difference maker. And the energy around the field, and like all of a sudden everybody in Chicago had a Boston accent. They were all no ma, like just all over the place, and he did. He was a superstar, so he brought like a little bit, and on a team that already had superstars, brought it even more. And it was fun. He was great, man. We had a great relationship. He was great with me. I admired his dedication to how like hard he worked and the things he put in to go out there and play. Unfortunately, got hurt and stuff like that, but very superstitious. All the batting glove stuff was just like, that was like the 14th thing he did that was superstitious that day, I remember he'd always walk up the stairs one foot, 1 foot, 1 foot, 1 foot, 1 foot, 1 foot. And like after like day 4, I go, hey dude, if there's a fire in the hotel, I get to go before you. You got it? I'm going down before you. I'm not waiting for you to go up all these stairs. But like, he was just great. And that team was fun, man. I really wish that we would have had a shot to get in the playoffs, because that team, from the starting pitching standpoint and then what we had offensively, we just didn't get it done, but that was a fun time.
I have a 2-parted question. First of all, when there's a bench clearing brawl, what is your strategy when that goes on?
Get in the middle of it.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, it's the Canadian hockey player mentality. It's like, no, I think the initial mentality is let's break it up, right? Like, save my teammate. Whoever's on the bottom of the pile, let's try and save that guy.
Okay, so then going off of that 2003 Cincinnati Reds, Kyle Farnsworth, that mound charging, what's going through your head? What was, give us a little play-by-play on that.
Yeah, that was really save a teammate. Yeah. Because he decided it was a good idea to start yelling at Farnsey, and that's never a good idea. So, I was with the Reds at the time, and he pipes off like the whole, and that had stemmed, by the way, that whole people like, why did that brawl happen? But the reality was that there was some interaction going on between LaRue and Pryor earlier, because LaRue was wearing Pryor out as far as roping him all over the ballpark. So then Pryor, I think he might have hit him or buzzed his tower. So now later on in the game, Paul Wilson comes up the bunt, and here's this pitch up by his head, and then, like he's yelling at Farnsworth, and Farnsey tackles him. And so we all go out there, and Farnsey's got him in like a boa constrictor headlock. He can't get him off him. I think Willie's eyes are rolling back in his head, and all of a sudden I just feel this like huge arm around my neck. And I'm like, now I can't breathe, right? So now I'm like, all right, somebody help my teammate. I got to get out of here. And I kind of push out, and it's Dusty, And he's like, get off the pile, with a few other words in there, like he was just like, like, this ain't your fight, get off the pile. And he was just like there for his guys. He was coming in. So yeah, that was crazy. And then we're on the bus afterwards, we're taking the airport. Me, him, Kent Merker, and Gabe White are sitting at the back of the bus, and Danny Graves and a few guys. And he's got like cut on his nose, he's got a cut on his eye, he's got gauze up his nose.
This is Wilson?
This is Paul Wilson, because he won't stop bleeding, and he's like, hey, did I get any punches in? And we're like, no, you didn't get any, man. But you got a lot of respect from all of us, and he's like, what an idiot. You sure I didn't get any punches in? Like his face looked like he'd been in a beehive. It was pretty funny. So yeah, great lessons there. Don't charge Kyle Farnsworth.
Yeah. Especially now. I don't know if you've seen photos of him now.
I saw some today.
Yeah, really?
Yeah, I guess he's in cut mode. It's like where you get rid of your sugar. And, he's like
physically
a dominant human being.
Absolutely, yes. I wouldn't have charged him back then. I definitely wouldn't charge him now.
Yeah.
But I'm glad you brought up Dusty too. Obviously playing for Dusty and then Lou Piniella here in Chicago. What were some of the similarities or some of the differences between how these like iconic managers went about their business and dealt with you guys as players?
Yeah, I think similarities were just like how intelligent they were about the game of baseball. They knew a lot about the game and what it took to win games, and what it took from like a human standpoint. I think sometimes I would say Dusty had a little bit more compassion. There's a little bit more of a personal touch, but Lou had that as well. I mean, he was unbelievable with like, the foundation I had and my family and things you were going through personally. But like for him, he wore the winning and losing on his sleeve a little bit more. Dusty was a little bit more chill. But it was lucky, I went from Dusty to Lou. So it was like both guys didn't overcoach you. They just be ready, be prepared, and let you do your thing. And I think that was, they appreciated that. They appreciated, like, if you worked hard, you got a bigger leash. If they saw you working, I mean, like Lou putting me back in the rotation in 2008, I remember running into him at the mall in Camelback there, and I just come off the mountain, running the mountain. And like one start, during the start, I said I was fine. I want to go back over the 8th inning. He goes, hey, Larry, of course he's fine. Dude runs Camelback Mountain. He's not tired, like he was totally appreciated that. He knew how hard I was working. So yeah, I'm thankful for both of those guys. Dusty and him both gave me great opportunities and let me be me.
Kind of off that, what was it like when Dusty's, obviously we know he won the World Series as a manager finally, but seeing him get that mob that they showed right after the final out, seeing him, everyone not high-fiving each other, but surrounding him, what was it like to see that moment for Dusty?
Yeah, well, it was special because I guarantee you if you talk to all of those guys, like, they would all say, like, it meant something more to them because of him. Like, he was hired at, like, a really, tough time for them as an organization, all the sign stealing stuff. And he came in there with that attitude, and he just continued to win like he always does. And so when they win, you see all these coaches, all these people who, it's like now your relief for him of going, finally you get your due. Because like he's a Hall of Fame manager, he's got over 2,000 wins. And the only thing he was missing on the resume was a World Series championship. So for him to get that as a manager cements his place in Cooperstown. And like, so many times throughout a season, like you're always happy for yourself when you do great. But when you have great teammates or great friends and things like that, and they have moments in a game or a huge season like we were talking about with D. Lee, it feels better almost than it does for yourself because it's like that's somebody you really care about, and they obviously care a ton about him.
And you get to be a fan and watch some of it too,
Yeah.
right? Especially like Derrek Lee 2005. Like I watched it as a fan, but I can only imagine being you and watching this all happen from the bullpen and stuff throughout that year. That must have been amazing.
Oh man, yeah, and just like it was like in a sense, being on a basketball team with a guy who's dropping 30 every night. and like when the game's on the line, clutch hit, here we go. Like I remember a home run he hit off Mike Piazza. Sorry, not off Mike Piazza. Mike Piazza hit me with a line drive in my right forearm through 2 innings. It was my first ever save opportunity as the quote-unquote closer. The wind was blowing in 1,000,000 miles an hour, and D. Lee cut the wind for the home run. Like, that's how good he was going that year, that nobody was hitting a ball out that day. And D. Lee hit a walk-off. Like, it was just, like, so much fun to watch. And when it's a good guy like that and somebody that everybody feels the same way about, it's like this, like, extra little bit of, yeah. Like, sometimes some guys, like, whatever, they're teammates.
Yeah.
Like, hey, cool, good game. I'm happy we won. Instead of I'm happy for you,
All right, we're going to take a quick break here, and when we get back, we're going to hear more from Ryan Dempster.
We know you love Chicago. You devour the pizza, admire Chicago's skyline, and cheer on Chicago sports teams, especially the Cubs. If you wanted to live in a more boring place, you'd live in St. Louis. Why not bank with Chicago's Bank too? Upgrade your wallet with an exclusive Wintrust Cubs debit card, which you can get when you open a Wintrust Cubs checking account. Show your Cubs pride and open an account at wintrust.com/Cubs. Member FDIC, equal housing lender.
You talked a little bit about it, like closing and obviously being back in the rotation too. If you had the choice, packed house at Wrigley either way, would you rather be getting the final 3 outs, everybody on their feet, or taking the ball and knowing that you have the chance to go 9 or go 7? Like, which did you like or thrive in better, do you think?
Yeah, I'll take the start and still get the last 3 outs. That'd be awesome.
Yeah, that's a great workaround, yeah.
That is a pretty fun thing to do. I didn't do it a ton in my career, but I did it a few times. Yeah, like, I really took pride in every 5th day. Like, my whole life until I came back from Tommy John was starter. So that's what I knew, and I love that. There's nothing better than like being the one in charge out there and kind of leading the ship, because you are, right. Like, there was no pitch clock, so nothing happened until you threw the ball. But there is. It's a tough job and it's a thankless job, but there is nothing like those last 3 outs at Wrigley with 40,000 on their feet going crazy Saturday afternoon. Knowing you lock that down, you're gonna go have a nice cold one afterwards. It's pretty awesome.
Kind of off that, what was the most memorable moment you've had in a Cubs uniform? Obviously, you touched on starting as a starter, but like, was there one that sticks out?
Yeah, it's a good question. I would say, honestly, probably the 2008 All-Star game. Was probably, I would like to say, some of the playoffs, but we didn't go deep, so they don't, getting bounced, you got like these sour memories, like gave up a grand slam to James Loney that I still dread to this day. How did he foul that pitch off, but the one before it. Yeah, I would say probably that probably was like the coolest moment. Like at old Yankee Stadium, I got 8 teammates, all of us there, including Lou, and to go out there in the bottom of the 9th inning in a tie game and strike out the side was pretty awesome.
Our stat researcher Kyle, he said that minimum 3 batters faced, you have the highest strikeout percentage in an All-Star game.
Yeah.
So that's pretty.
I think it was the first time since 1955 that had been done.
Really?
9th inning or later, yeah. There was a lot of and the crazy part about all that is that both Lou and Clint Hurdle told me I would not pitch in the All-Star game for 2 straight days, and I begged and pleaded. I went into Clint Hurdle's office 4 times because I went to the All-Star game in 2000 and I didn't pitch.
Do you think at that point they were just, after like the second or third time that you go in, they're kind of messing with you? Like,
no,
or they were serious?
Oh, they were dead serious. Yeah. I pitched out of necessity, like because it was now a tie game, and I was using the men's room, and Billy Wagner just giving up a home run to J.D. Drew, and it was a tie game, and bang, 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 bang on the door. Hey, going into the top of the 9th. Hey, Demp, if it's still tied in the 9th, you're in. Huh? What? What's he talking about?
Yeah.
And I didn't throw. Soto was warming me up. I didn't throw a strike warming up. I was so bad. They told me I wasn't pitching, so I really hadn't played catch. Right. And so then I was awful. And he'd started the game and he'd come down to help out in the bullpen. And then he stopped halfway through and he came out to the mound. He's like, "You okay?" I go, "Yeah, why?" He goes, "Because you haven't thrown a strike." And I was like, "Yeah, I'll be all right." And I remember when the doors swung open, I thought, man, I just lost the All-Star game. And then I said, come on, Auntie Doris, I need you. My great aunt, had passed away a couple years before that. And she was a huge Yankee fan. So much that when I started my second game of my career at Yankee Stadium, she was rooting for the Yankees.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, diehard, yeah. Like
Wow.
she's just like, but my dad had taken her ashes and spread them across center field during batting practice. So he'd went out there with like a little vial, like a pill container, and just spread them. So I literally, as I walked over
At the All-Star game that day?
No, the year before we went there in 2007 in Interleague, he'd done that. And so then when I was going across the morning track, I just said, come on, Auntie Doris, I need you right here. Yeah.
She was there?
She got me, yeah.
That's
Do you remember the hitters?
She probably said none of them were Yankees.
That's probably true, yeah.
It was Ian Kinsler, Deandre Navarro, and JD Drew.
Okay.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
You mentioned 07 or 08, like the playoff run. I mean, can you kind of take us behind that a little bit, just what it was like to be on the team, to be in the clubhouse? And obviously it didn't end the way you or the rest of the team or even Cubs fans would have liked, but just like 08, best team in the league, like wire to wire essentially, and 07 obviously getting in there. Like, can you take us just behind like making the playoffs back-to-back years and what that was like? And then, maybe even just a little bit of the disappointment that you guys felt afterwards and the hunger to get there someday.
Yeah, like it really was, and it took a little bit, right? Like 07, Soriano signs, DeRosa comes over, Jason Marquis, Ted Lilly, some of the other core guys that were there were still there. And so there was a lot of expectation, which was fine, but we were all still kind of trying to get to know each other a little bit, right? Like you're not instantly, when you come together like that, it's hard. You got to try and find relationships and what works for you. And we were doing okay. We were doing great. And then that's when Lou went off on Mark Wegner at third base, kicking dirt on him and throwing the hat. And it really did kind of spark us in a way. I think it was just like, okay, enough messing around. Like, we're wasting really good talent in here by not dominating teams. And then we just started to go on a tear. And then, of course, clinching and struggling. That year I was a little worried because we limped to the finish line. Like we went to Miami, we got swept by the Marlins. I'll never forget that. Bill Murray was at that series that weekend. Here we were getting ready to clinch, and all we need to do is win one game. And I'm closing. And the night before, we got back after the game, we're at the hotel bar there for a second, and I run into Bill and his brother, and we're just talking. And the next day I come in, and Lou brought me in the bottom of the 8th inning, and we were up by 1 run. Runner on third base. I think Cody Ross was up. And he brings me in, and I come set, like I'm getting ready. I got a runner on first and third or second and third, something like that. I know I had a runner on third because it's sac fly ties the game. And I come set, and I'm like, whew. And I go to check the runner, and right behind the runner is Bill Murray. And he's just going like this, And I was like, stepped off. I go, what? Gosh, man, this is freaking me out right now. Bill Murray's over. Bill, what are you doing? Sit down, kind of threw me for a loop. So then I think he gave up a sac fly. They tied the game. Might have been a hit, but I think it was a sac fly. And then they tied the game. We ended up losing the game. And then we went to Cincinnati and clinched there. And then, we didn't obviously go any farther than that. And then 08, it was like, all right, now we got like Jim Edmonds. We got Bob Howry and Scott Air. We got we loaded up, this team's stacked. And we were, man. We just waxed people. The Colorado game where we're down 8-1 and we come back and win the game. And it's just like one after another, and we were just unstoppable. And then, a combination of, I think when we clinched that fine line between how much do I rest, how much do I let guys keep playing, and then we ran into a hot Dodger team. And that's the reality, right? We see it this year. Look at the Dodgers this year, 111 wins during the season and then get bounced. When you run into a hot team at the wrong time, and those Dodger pitchers, Billingsley and Derek Lowe and Kuroda all dealt, and, Manny was trying to get pregnant, so, he was hitting everything this side of the moon and couldn't get him out, and, there was a lot going on. Yeah.
Jason Hayward mentioned in his, final press conference about the curse of the Billy Goat, and, how they joked about it in 16, that, they didn't care about the Billy Goat. Was that something that you guys talked about? Did it come up? Was that ever a conversation?
Yeah, I think a little bit. we didn't openly talk about it as much as the team did in 16, because I think sometimes that's a good thing. It's like, the elephant in the room,
Right.
or the goat in the room.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was almost like a denial, like, oh yeah, forget that, screw that. There's no curse. Instead of being like, yeah, cool, we're eating goat afterwards. Like that's kind of how they were, and I think that played a big difference. I think there was always just this little bit, right? Like this, after the Grand Slam in 2008 that Loney hit, it was like you could hear a pin drop in that place afterwards, and it was a 4-2 game. It wasn't like in the fifth. It was like you could feel it from the fans. Whereas I think going through that maybe in 2016, I think the 15 season helped going into 2016 because you beat the Cardinals. You finally get past that first round again, and then even when the Roger Davis home run happened, it was sure the pin drop, but then all of a sudden it was like, okay, here we go, let's go. And everybody, instead of thinking bad things, we're thinking good things. And when you collectively have the team, coaches, players, managers, all that stuff, the front office, and then the fans, that energy is real. So if you channel that energy and bring it out in like a positive way, the players feel it, and they felt that love of all the fans in Cleveland that night, and were able to overcome that.
What was your perspective for not only Game 7, but like just that whole fall of 16 and like what emotions were going through you watching it? Because obviously happiness and joy and knowing those guys and your personal relationships, but anything else too, the fact that like, hey, this does kind of stink that I wasn't part of the team that finally ended this championship drought. Like how much of that did you experience, and how much did you kind of think through that just the entire fall?
Yeah, 2016 was an interesting year for me. I kind of felt like I was on like the 60-day DL with no chance at a rehab assignment.
Yeah.
Like that's how the guys treated me. I was around a lot in the locker room, a lot. Plane rides, all those kind of things, being around them. And so I wasn't envious of like what they were having. I was actually like really, really proud of them, because I knew through what we went through in those years and what I did as a player on the north side, like for 9 seasons, to try and be a part of winning and bringing that. I knew what that feeling was like. So to see them figuring out ways to overcome that, the comeback in San Francisco, and then what they did to the Dodgers, and then I remember walking up Waveland from my place, and then picking up Theo on the way. We were walking over together, and like down 3-1, like completely confident. Like, oh, just as long as we win tonight, we're good. And it was like, who do we got going? John Lester. Like, we're winning tonight, and it was just this really cool feeling of just like, this is going to happen. Especially after Game 6, like when they went out there and thumped them in Cleveland in Game 6. It's like, oh, okay, here we go. Start planning a parade, an after party, and lack of sleep for a few days. Like, so yeah, it was just, I got to watch it from the outside, yet still super, like I just retired 3 years earlier. I'd played with, Lester and Lackey and Rossi in Boston. I'd played with Travis Wood and Rizzo here, and I'd been around these guys. So it was like, there was a lot of personal attachment, and I was close enough where I was feeling some of the same emotions they were feeling, but able to just appreciate and understand what they were going through, and just watching everything they took on. It's pretty amazing what they went through, to be able to do all that and win, and pretty special.
Another guy you have a connection with from that 16 team, Kyle Hendricks, obviously the trade. What was it like seeing him have the career he's had, start a Game 7? What's been your relationship with him, and how special is it to kind of be tied to that for forever?
Yeah, it's great. I think more important than obviously what he did on a field, just like when you get traded for somebody and they are the type of person that he is, it's like really, really means a lot. But then to know that like they trade away me, and all I ever wanted to do was win a World Series here, and the guy that they trade, 2 guys, but he ends up being the guy starting Game 7 of the World Series and pitched unbelievable in Game 7 and the whole year, and what he did, and start the game that sends him to the World Series. It was magical, like a serious attachment, and then our bond and our friendship and conversations that we have throughout the years, and it's just been I'm so happy for him, and because he's a huge part of that success, and in a weird way, it's like all those times sitting in the office while they're asking me all these trades. Will you go here? Will you go here? Will you go here? it's like fate or some sort of weird way. It's like you could have said yes here or you could have said yes here, but you say yes here and that leads to that. It's like you are a part of it in some sort of weird universe, that if you said something else, maybe that doesn't happen. So it's really cool. And, you're welcome. You're welcome, Cubs fans. Yeah.
Well, that's a perfect way to end it for multiple reasons. But, Dem, thank you so much. We really appreciate the story time and your insight on your career and just everything else since. So we really appreciate you stopping by.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
No problem. That'll do it for this week's edition of the Cubs Weekly Podcast. Again, we are presented by Wintrust. Don't forget to download and subscribe to the pod on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, and check us out in video form on the Marquee Sports Network app and YouTube. For Dem and Andy, I'm Tony. Thanks for watching and listening.